Across the forests and wilderness of North America, the thought of Bigfoot skulking through the trees fits the scenery like a hand in glove. Seemingly every state has its own special lore surrounding one, a hairy creature with an imposing presence scaring away campers and hikers alike. They're one of America's oldest known cryptids, and even though modern technology never seems to capture a clear enough image, people swear up and down that they indeed exist. Down in the Florida Everglades, a peculiar variant of these beings stands out a little more than the rest. A type of Bigfoot or Sasquatch that has stalked the southeast for a little more than 200 years. Its name is the Florida Skunk Ape. Long before European settlers colonized what would become the United States, the indigenous tribes of the Seminole and Miccosukee told tales of a creature known as Kapkaki, or furry tall man, who resided in the surrounding swamps and woodlands. Stories vary as to what the beast's intentions were, but depending on who you ask, the Kapkaki is either a guardian, a protector of nature, or a carnivorous monster who raids food supplies and preys on those who get too close. No matter the version, a shared detail between both perspectives is that it's a tall, furry, bipedal creature with a distinctive, rancid smell. An interesting report would come out of the small city of Apalachicola, Florida, in the year 1818, located in the state's panhandle. According to a local newspaper there, witnesses reported seeing a strange, ape-like creature that stood upright and measured between 5 and 7 feet tall. Quoting the newspaper, a quote, man-sized monkey was seen stalking the area in recent days, stalking fishermen along the Apalachicola River behind the brush, and going so far as raiding local grocery shops in search of food. This series of events seemed to come out of nowhere, but supposedly witnesses provided similar descriptions of the hairy beast. From then on, it seems the sightings never stopped. The skunk ape has been a staple to Florida and neighboring states for generations now, and there has been no shortage of reports over the decades. Although it didn't gain its signature name until much after the early sightings, it became apparent that this creature was notable for more than its hulking appearance, but rather its smell. Unlike other Bigfoot-like creatures, an interesting trend with this one is its signature stench, as it does resemble that of a skunk with a mix of garbage and rotten eggs. Another interesting detail is its reported height, where most Bigfoot descriptions tell of a creature starting between 7 and 10 feet tall. The Florida skunk ape only stands between 6 and 7, and it wouldn't be until 1997 that we would get the most compelling evidence of it. This photo was taken by Fire Chief of Okeechobee, Florida, Vince Dorr, and has since become the most infamous piece of media surrounding the skunk ape. In July of 1997, Dorr was routinely patrolling the area in the early morning hours. It was dark and notably foggy that morning. It would be when the fire chief traveled along Burns Road, a gravel road that leads into the Everglades, that he saw it. Just 400 yards away, a hairy creature that he first thought was a bear was making its way across the path. When whatever it was stood up on 2 legs, Vince was astonished. Thinking quickly, he grabbed his camera and snapped the now famous photo, showing what appears to be a large, dark-colored beast staring directly into the lens. For once, a face was finally associated with the legend, creating a media firestorm. Regardless of what he saw, Chief Dorr still remained skeptical about what exactly he witnessed, but is honest that he couldn't pinpoint what it was, saying, "It's something. I ain't never said it was the skunk ape, but it's something." The following week, more than 50 people reported sightings of the creature within the Big Cypress National Preserve. 3 years later, in July of 2000, another piece of evidence would emerge regarding the skunk ape. Dave Sheely, an expert on the subject, would make a visit to Cypress National Preserve to search for the enigmatic cryptid. He was filming the region for documentation purposes. That's when this happened. Whilst filming, a large creature can be seen moving around the swamp and trees before suddenly bolting out of sight and into the underbrush. Sheely estimates the being was running at speeds of up to 22 miles per hour, much faster than any human could, especially in the conditions seen in the video. As you can expect, this footage remains to be the subject of much debate among viewers due to its faraway distance and graininess. Although, Sheely remains adamant about what he captured. The general consensus is that this footage is inconclusive. Dave Sheely has had a long history with the Florida skunk ape, sharing his first experience in 1973 when he was 9 years old. One day, while Dave and his brother Jack went deer hunting at Big Cypress, they saw the skunk ape with their own eyes. Dave recalled, quote, "It was walking across the swamp and my brother spotted it first, but I couldn't see it over the grass. I wasn't tall enough. My brother picked me up and I saw it, about 100 yards away. It looked like a man, but completely covered with hair," end quote. A few years before this incident, their father also saw a set of massive footprints in the area. Dave has become so intrigued by the Florida skunk ape that he now owns and operates the Skunk Ape Research Center in Okeechobee, and according to him, the Everglades are home to not one, but 7 to 9 of the elusive cryptids. Even though these two incidents were the first to provide some semblance of evidence, alleged sightings of the skunk ape are in no way few and far between. There's a 1929 incident that takes the skunk ape to the Florida Keys, in a structure known as the Perky Bat Tower, a man-made habitat to attract and house bats for ecological purposes. It was built off the beaten path where wildlife was less likely to be disturbed by humans, but something else had plans for the structure. When Perky Bat Tower was finally stocked with the bats, witnesses close to the area had reported sightings of an unknown ape-like creature covered in hair walking near the tower. And dramatically, the creature approached the tower to vigorously shake it, startling the bats and making them flee in large numbers. After it did this, it ran off into the woods. The skunk ape comes into discussion when this bizarre happening is visited in conversation, but it's often debated. The truth is, the incident was so long ago and so obscure that it's nearly impossible to dissect it any further. However, with the description of whatever it was coming off as so similar, what else could it be? Similar to the 1997 incident involving the fire chief, there's also a well-known story of a man experiencing the skunk ape in his car, but this time, much more up close and personal. Somewhere in Suwannee County in 1942, a man was driving one night down a dirt road by himself. Out of nowhere, what he described as a large ape-like creature rushed his car and leapt into the running board, leaving the lone driver absolutely panicked. The creature, still on the running board, began bashing its fists on the windows of the car, aggressively trying to break in. Scared out of his mind, the driver did all he could do by smashing the gas pedal and hoped for the best. Eventually, after nearly half a mile of this madness, the ape leapt off the car and fled back into the woods. Suwannee County consists of a habitat true to form for creatures like the skunk ape, being close to dense woods and swamps. And being so up close and personal to this creature for so long, the man was able to describe it in detail that only confirmed the creature's appearance even more. From the Perky Bat Tower incident of 1929 to this incident, these were only the early incidents involving the notorious skunk ape. As the 20th century moved on, sightings and encounters would ramp up significantly. Once known as the Hardin booger, the Florida skunk ape had an uptick in sightings, especially between the 1950s and 1970s. A 1963 encounter with a family living in Alachua County detailed the creature stalking their home one night, coming close enough to be described in the same detail as prior witnesses. In this story, a creature approached the family's home and peered through one of the windows for a few moments, causing a sudden panic. Interest only increased when the family reported to police that it looked like a giant ape, with all of the usual details of previous stories. Even more astonishing is the story involving two police officers in Palm Beach County in the 1970s. When enough reports of a strange ape-like creature were called into the department, two officers, named Melvin Lewis and Ernie Milner, were sent out to the local wilderness to investigate. Those who had witnessed it said it stood between 7 and 8 feet tall. It was covered in shaggy hair and emitted a strong, skunk-like smell. Per their account, Melvin and Ernie noticed they were being stalked through the grove by a beast, looking precisely as described. Scared and taken aback, both officers raised their sidearms and opened fire at the cryptid. The officers recollected that they definitely hit the creature, but it seemed unfazed by the gunfire. Instead of retaliating, it turned around and ran deeper into the brush. Instead of leaving, both men were brave enough to give chase to this ape as it ran, taking note of the massive footprints it left behind. Unfortunately, it proved too fast for them, and even though the creature was long gone by the time Melvin and Ernie called off the chase, they did recover something. Along the way, there was a piece of pushed-down barbed wire that had just been freshly stepped on. On it was a tuft of fur that had been left behind. The 70s appear to be one of the most popular times to see the skunk ape. Some attribute this to a spike in construction in and around the Everglades at the time, perhaps disrupting its natural habitat. Mind you, incidents like these only stand out a little further than the rest. Throughout history, you can find encounters both big and small orbiting around the skunk ape. A common denominator connecting all of them is at least a few key details: its height, color, and infamous smell. Behavior also plays a role in identifying the cryptid. Despite some of the encounters that classify the skunk ape as potentially aggressive, the majority of encounters more or less make it seem like a curious being whose main goal is only to look for food. Much like the initial sighting that made it famous in 1818, David Shealy, the one who filmed the video in 2000, reported something similar. He says that wildlife bait stands that were filled with lima beans were suddenly raided by an unknown animal, leaving strange footprints around the area. To test this further, he placed even more lima bean stands in the area. Soon after, multiple sightings of the skunk ape were reported. Could all of this truly be coincidental? A seemingly endless string of skunk ape encounters have been reported, so much so that the creature has become an official mascot for the Sunshine State. Another great mystery of the Everglades, and perhaps one of its oldest. There sits a small museum in Okeechobee, Florida, known as the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters, inviting tourists and enthusiasts alike to indulge in the ongoing hunt for the skunk ape, displaying various pieces of evidence and offering personal knowledge about the elusive creature. Today, sightings continue to emerge, with the skunk ape being reported by 48 out of 67 counties in the state of Florida since 2010. All in all, after so many generations of stories, the question is, what is it? What exactly is the Florida skunk ape? A real manifestation of ancient indigenous folklore? Or an unknown species that has somehow evaded capture for more than 200 years? And, if it does exist, could there be more than just one? Until those questions are answered, if they ever are, Floridians may never know what could be lurking, staring at them, just off into the wilderness.